Record now, just so you know, and we'll begin here in a couple minutes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right. I think we'll wait a couple minutes here. Okay, good. All right. Well, I think that we're going to start going here. Tom, if you're ready to go, I'm going to do an introduction here for you, and we'll then turn over to you. And you've got control of the PowerPoint here.
Okay, very good.
Just a few comments about the webinar. If anyone has any questions, everyone is on mute right now. However, you can feel free to type questions into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will be answering those. If you have any IT issues, as well as we've also been given the word from Tom that he is looking for questions as well and invites those during his discussion. We'll actually have a few natural breaks in order to answer some of those as well. So please type your questions in. We'll start going with his presentation, and during those breaks, we'll ask those questions. And if you feel more comfortable, you can type that you'd rather have us unmute you, and we can actually unmute you for your question as well, if you'd prefer. So I think we're going to get started here. And thank you very much, Tom, for first of all, for presenting today. And we're going to introduce Tom to everyone. He is the Director of Advocacy and Public Affairs for the BIA of New Jersey. So for over 10 years, Tom Grady has worked in the areas of public policy, human services, and brain injury. Tom currently serves as Director of Advocacy and Public Affairs for the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey and has done so since October of 2002. Tom's main area of expertise are in governmental relations, legislative development, constituent relations, and communications. He has directed efforts resulting in policies that prevent brain injury and facilitate supports and services needed by people with brain injury. Among his chief accomplishments include increasing access to community-based brain injury services by managing a lobbying campaign resulting in a total of $54,200,000 being appropriated amongst all state budgets between fiscal years 2004 and 2011. The US BIA is grateful to the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey and to Tom for supporting us in this, our first series of advocacy webinars. So thank you very much, Tom. We invite you to begin your presentation.
And thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to do this first webinar from USBIA. And as a first point, the purpose of the webinar is to really provide the listener with basic information about advocacy as I've seen it over the years. So although this is my first webinar as a presenter, being involved in advocacy for brain injury is not really new to me. I've been with the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey since 2002, so we're talking over 10 years. And as you'll hear in a bit, we've gotten quite a number of pieces of legislation passed into law. So I'm very proud to have been a part of that, and want to try and shed some light on some tips that have been helpful to me, and I think the Alliance, in hopes of having everybody in the U.S. Brain Injury Alliance use them so they can improve their advocacy efforts. So with that said, the way I've organized this webinar is really by questions. I find that asking questions is a very helpful way to organize any presentation I do, and it's very helpful in terms of planning and the other effort that could result in an advocacy goal. So if you go, here we go, that worked pretty nicely. So at the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll be able to answer the following questions. And bear with for 1 second, I need to shrink my screen so I can see this, but I will skip that. The first question is, why is the First Amendment important to the foundation of advocacy? The second one is very basically, what is advocacy? And what are the basic steps to advocate effectively? Thirdly, how do I organize an advocacy message? Fourth, how do I keep an advocacy message sincere and succinct? And finally, how do I accomplish a successful advocacy meeting? Now again, what I present here I think is helpful, but it's not going to be the end-all of all types of information. There's plenty of information out there that can contribute and add to the presentation I'm about to give. So with that said, let's take a look at each question one at a time. So why is the First Amendment important to the foundation of advocacy? On your screen you should see some language that looks quite familiar, which is the First Amendment, which is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So basically, in more informal language, the First Amendment gives U.S. citizens a right to communicate freely, to gather, and to advocate or lobby the government for change. And here in New Jersey, I think we have a very good example of that, and that's through one of our advocacy committees called the Council for the Head Injured Community. The acronym is CHIC. And basically, CHIC comes together on a regular basis, usually about once per month, to discuss topics of interest that are of interest to them. So the point here is that all these members exercise their right under the First Amendment to assemble. In some cases, CHIC takes part in educating others through one of our signature education sessions called Mic at the Mic. The point here is that CHIC members come together and exercise their freedom of speech to educate others. And then also, depending upon their interest in public policy, they advocate for change in public policy before lawmakers, exercising their right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So exercising one's First Amendment right can lead to change in public policy, which can impact people with brain injury, their loved ones, and those who provide care and support to them. So here in New Jersey, again, I mentioned before that I'm proud to have been personally involved and contributed to some of our efforts here to pass bills that became law, and some of them include the establishment of a TBI fund that created an advisory council on TBI. Actually, for the sake of full disclosure, I wasn't on board when that bill became law, but the Alliance did advocate for that law and was very successful. So also, we encouraged Congress, we passed a resolution or had a resolution passed that would encourage Congress and the President to pass the National Pediatric Acquired Brain Injury Plan Act. That's one of our most recent accomplishments. We also raised awareness of concussion. We also got a law passed that would raise awareness of concussion and establish guidelines for student athletes to return to play. And many states have realized the same accomplishment throughout the United States. We've also realized law that requires youth to wear helmets when skiing. And New Jersey is, as I understand it, is the first state in the union to have passed such a law. So we're kind of a trendsetter in that regard. Also, we had a bill passed that established the New Jersey Special Education and TBI Task Force, which incidentally is finishing up their work to make recommendations to the governor and the legislature about what may be of value to students impacted by brain injury in the education system. Also, we expanded the helmet law, the bicycle helmet law, to require children under age 17 to wear a helmet, also when bicycling, skateboarding, or roller skating. And as some of you are likely aware, March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. We were very successful in getting a resolution signed into law that would make March of each year in New Jersey Brain Injury Awareness Month. So the point here is not to brag, but rather to underscore that none of this would be possible if we didn't have the First Amendment. So bringing it down to a more personal or micro level, what does the First Amendment mean for advocates and anybody else who's a U.S. citizen, for that matter? Basically, you have the right to speak about your concerns. You have the right to raise awareness of brain injury issues through the press. You have the right to assemble with others to address topics and issues of interest that are of interest to you and the brain injury community. And you have the right to petition your government through your elected officials and advocate change in public policy. The First Amendment is basically your right as a U.S. citizen. And I think it's something that I think many people, including me, have really taken for granted, because many people in the world don't have that right. They really can't speak their mind without retribution. So I think it's important to recognize the value of it, and most importantly, use it. So after all that, what is advocacy? Advocacy, simply defined, is the act of pleading for, supporting, or recommending. That's very basically. So after that, the question becomes for an advocate, or questions, I should say, what do you want to plead for, and what do you want to recommend? And I think these are questions, or these fundamental questions, should be asked by individuals and by organizations to help them clarify what it is they want to change, or what they want to raise awareness of. And advocacy comes not just in the creation of laws. I mean, it does include that, but also generates talk about brain injury issues in an effort to raise awareness. It also gets elected officials interested in issues, and it also raises awareness through the media. So I think the idea here is to not look at advocacy solely as a public policy term, but rather as a broader communications term to really raise awareness among people in your state and throughout the nation. Okay, so any questions so far? Anybody care to offer any thoughts? I want to try and break this up at different points of the presentation, just to make sure people have an opportunity to ask questions that may be on the tip of their tongue right now. So please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'll continue moving forward.
Okay, and just if you'd like to, just type yourself into the question box down there, and we can unmute you if it's easier.
Either way, you can unmute me, or whichever. I think probably the best thing would be to maybe talk to the person one-on-one.
Okay, so if the participants want to just go ahead and let us know if you want to be unmuted, go ahead and let us know right now, and we'll unmute you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I guess I'll continue moving forward then.
Okay.
Okay, so what are the basic steps to advocate effectively? I mean, it's basically three general steps. One, define the problem, concern, or issue that is of interest to you or your respective alliance. Two, define which end you want to achieve. Some of you may have read Stephen Covey, who recently passed away, and I think from results from a bicycle crash, if I'm not mistaken. Stephen Covey was the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of the most basic and first habits that he spoke about and wrote about was begin with the end in mind. And that really does help a person clarify all their subsequent activities and action steps and meetings, all to that one end they seem to want to achieve. And thirdly, act. So when you get to the second step, define the end you want to achieve, I think it's good to ask yourself a lot of questions to better clarify what your end is going to be. And some examples are basically, what is my goal, or what is my organization's goal? What do I want to plead for? What do I want to recommend? What do I want to accomplish? And I think why? I think that's a key question to ask. It's a three-letter word that really brings a lot of context into an advocacy campaign. What is the main message I want to communicate? And who may be able to assist me? How can I get these people to support me? Okay, I'm one slide ahead. Once these questions are answered, brain injury advocates can work toward fulfilling their advocacy goals as an individual or, again, as an alliance. And then third step is act. And again, you can act independently, or you can bring it to the attention of your respective brain injury alliance in hopes that they can support your efforts in advocating for the change you want to see or the issue you want to raise awareness of. Okay, so how do I organize an advocacy message, or how do you organize an advocacy message? Well, you have three basic sections. You have the opening, you have the body, and you have the closing. And hopefully everybody can see this slide as I have it up. And advocacy message is really, almost any message should really contain these three sections. And so let's examine each one in turn. First, the opening. You know, a lot of times it's good to have a catchy way to raise interest in a particular issue. Sometimes a statistic or a interesting quote may do the job. There's a lot of ways you can grab a person's attention. But what should be really included here in the opening is, what's your core message? You know, very succinctly, right to the point, what message do you want to really get across? Then you have the body, which is really the crux of an advocacy message. And a lot of documents I've read, a lot of readings I've consulted, really suggest not having more than 5 main points with supporting material in really any message or any speech or any written communication that a person may create. So when you have the main point, you want to include supportive material, which could include, but certainly not limited to, definitions, descriptions, explanations, examples, facts, and authorities. And then you can use a lot of material that you gather and a lot of research you gather to support each of the major points. And the result is you're building a case for your advocacy initiative. So then when you get down to the, some other stuff, I'm sorry, let me step back a little bit. When you back up to the body part of this, you want to ask yourself, again, why are you advocating for the particular need? Who's to be involved? You want to really present also, I think, the problem within the context of the body. You know, you want to know what the problem, the person with whom you're talking to or meeting with wants to know if harm is being done and what solutions you think may be available to reverse that harm. And then also coming up with some ideas about how to effectively address that may be also helpful. You know, it's one thing to state a problem, but it's also even more helpful, I think, to come up with a potential solutions to the problem, or at least be willing to brainstorm some ideas. And then when you get to the closing, I think it's good to restate what your advocacy message is. You should be very strong and yet respectful in your closing, and most of all, tell the person what you want him or her to do. Because if you don't do that, there's really no point in having a meeting in the first place. So it's good to be very, very specific in your ask, and it helps formulate the presentation, the message, and it helps provide context for the actions that are to be taken. So any questions? Comments, concerns? Okay. I will move on to the next slide. Right now you should be seeing this slide. How do I keep an advocacy message sincere and succinct? If I am to speak for 10 minutes, I need a week for preparation. If 15 minutes, 3 days. If half an hour, 2 days. If an hour, I'm ready now. And that was said by President Woodrow Wilson, who I believe was a New Jersey native. And the reason I mention this quote is because, not to quote Woodrow Wilson, who may have been from New Jersey, but I think this is a very interesting statement because I think to really develop a succinct message, it takes an awful lot of thought and an awful lot of whittling down to make sure it's crisp and make sure it's short, but you also don't want to compromise the main message you want to give to your communication partner. And speaking with sincerity, it does build trust. And I think in brain injury, I think if people approach it explaining how brain injuries impacted their lives, I really believe that most people, and legislators included in that, are going to sincerely listen to what they have to say. And I think a lot of people, at least here in New Jersey, lawmakers we've met with have really showed an interest in hearing the stories of people with brain injury. And I don't want to talk about the stories too much, only because I know that Jeff Nakbar of Minnesota is going to be speaking about this in the subsequent webinar. But it is important. But the most important thing here is be sincere, because I think a lot of people can recognize when people are not being sincere in their communication. So the result is you gain their trust and hopefully their support for what you're trying to accomplish. And then speaking succinctly, is respects a person's limited time. Most of us, and especially elected officials, are very busy people. And although they want to be as helpful to as many people as possible, they want people to hopefully be short and to the point and not take up extra time that does need to be taken up. But one thing that is important is don't compromise your message. I mean, I don't think it's good to be succinct, but always speak to where you're comfortable in that you think that your message has gotten across. And as it can be a very challenging balance to strike, I found. And it talks again to President Wilson's quote about practicing and taking time to really develop a succinct message. And one way to do that is by using the framework that I just presented on the slide before, or the slide before that one. And one kind of side note here is each year here in New Jersey, well, in all the states, I suppose, we go through the budget cycle and in developing the state budget. And each year, typically the both chambers of the legislature, the Senate and the General Assembly, do hold hearings, and these hearings are geared to take into consideration what people's requests of what they would want in a funding in a budget. So what I've found is they, meaning legislators, want to keep comments to about 5 to 7 minutes, and many times people do overstep the 5 to 7 minute mark. And most times, whoever's the chairperson of the committee will be gracious and kind of give a grace period for people to finish up their comments. But there have been numerous times in the past where I've seen people speak past the grace period to the point where the chairperson will say, basically, can you wrap it up, please? And people will just continually ignore that. And then even go one step beyond and say, basically, I'm not finished with my statement yet. And kind of, in my mind, develop an adverse situation where instead of engaging the people who are listening to the testimony, they may actually turn away from it. So the point here is that it's very important to take that time, I think, to develop a succinct message and get it to the point where you feel it as though you've communicated what you want to communicate and you've made the other person happy by being succinct.
And Tom, we have a
Yes,
quote here from one of the participants, which I think is a good quote here, from
good.
Mark Twain. I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead. And I think that we've all experienced how that goes. And that was from Jeff Nakbar, and I can understand that quote. That was a very succinct quote.
Absolutely, and I have seen that one. And Mark Twain is very interesting and comical person. But it's truth. It really is the truth, and that's not a skill I think that comes easy. I mean, I have the benefit of having been involved in Toastmasters International for over 10 years. And for those of you who may not know what it is, Toastmasters is a public speaking and leadership group, which mainly is focused on public speaking. And in a nutshell, people have numerous opportunities to deliver speeches based on certain objectives they want to accomplish. So if anybody is interested in learning more about that, I'd be happy to tell more about it offline, or you can even go to toastmasters.org. And I have found that to be probably the most important thing I've ever done in terms of education. I'm including having gone to college and graduate school and so forth. It's just such an important skill to have. It really should, I think, be taught in schools. So if you want to develop those skills, I would definitely recommend looking into a Toastmasters club, and they're all over the world, as the name implies, Toastmasters International, and that will definitely help a person develop and fine tune not only their speaking skills, but their writing and most importantly their thinking skills. And for some, public speaking is not the most comfortable things to be doing. In fact, I've read or I've heard that some people fear public speaking more than death, which I can't understand that, but I can appreciate why some people are very nervous about that. But back to the presentation, you should have on your screen now the slide that says "and yet be persuasive," and just kind of get back into the presentation here. It's good to be short, succinct, but yet be persuasive, and that's the topic of a presentation I'm working on for an annual seminar here in New Jersey. So persuasion, defined, is to prevail on a person to do something as by advising or urging. That is the definition I came up with, and I'd like to elaborate on this a bit because I think this is a very, very important element to advocacy. In fact, I would consider persuasion to be a cornerstone of effective advocacy. Cornerstone being a stone that unites two masonry walls at a certain intersection. And some of you may be asking, okay, so what's the other wall? And I would say the ability to teach. So I think when you put together the ability to persuade and to teach, I think you're going to have a good chance of being an effective advocate. So I think it's an important point to make, and hopefully that resonates with the listeners of this webinar. So three aspects that determine the ability to persuade, I've learned comes from Aristotle's rhetoric. People can persuade with ethos, which is character and credibility, logos, which is reason, and pathos, which is appealing to emotion. And I think when you combine those elements, combine that with effective teaching, you're going to have a persuasive advocacy message that can help get you to where you want to be from an advocacy standpoint. So persuasion, and again, I hope to do another webinar that explores on persuasion a bit more, and that's for another day though. But essentially, that's, in my mind, a nutshell of persuasion and how one, I think, can look at it. So the question is, what situations can persuasion be used by a person impacted by brain injury? Well, I think there's a whole mess of them, including enticing someone to join the Brain Injury Alliance of your respective state, motivating someone to make a contribution to a fundraiser, offering a topic to include in an alliance's annual seminar or meeting, explaining why someone should be elected to a leadership position in any organization a person may be involved with, asking a board to take a position on a particular brain injury issue, and I think mostly asking an elected official to introduce, support, or oppose a certain bill or issue and or take action on that bill or issue. So again, basically, persuasion comes into play when one wants another one to think or act in a certain way that one wants them to think and or act. That sounds like a mouthful right there, but I think it pretty much summarizes what persuasion actually is. Okay, so assuming you've assuming you've gotten to a point where you persuaded someone to have a meeting with you or have his or her staff have a meeting with you, how do you accomplish a successful advocacy meeting? And again, as per a point I made earlier in the presentation, this is certainly not a comprehensive list of suggestions, but there are things, these are suggestions that I have found helpful over the years. And again, in terms of preparation, you can go back to the slide, which has opening, the body, and the close to help organize your thoughts. And also, you can have the questions. You can use the questions to help you formulate your, help organize your advocacy meeting. So, before the meeting, do your homework. You know, it's important to know who you're working with, who you're trying to persuade, and why, and know your subject. Know everything possible about your subject that you could possibly learn to make it more persuasive. Now, there may be a point where you don't use all the information, which is probably going to be the case, but it's good to have that kind of in the back burner. And you know, for possible questions that may come up, it's again a fine balance between, I think, talking too much, talking too little. And I think when you're appealing to a legislator or elected official, I think it's very good to read their biography. Try to learn as much as you can about them, because you may find out that some of these people may share the same concern you do, or they may have an interest in disability issues and brain injury in particular. I just had a communication today with State Senator's office, who's been quite supportive of our issues in the past, and I think part of it is because this particular senator has a sister with a disability. I'm not exactly sure which one, but this person has taken a very strong interest in disability issues and in particular brain injury issues. And unfortunately, many people have this concern, including lawmakers. Brain injury does not discriminate, so you may find out that your elected representatives, excuse me, have a particular interest in brain injury, which I think could make it easier for them to receive whatever message it is you're sending over. And then remember, knowledge is power. I think that, again, the more knowledge you have, the more power to persuade one's going to have. But most of all, be prepared to specifically state what you want the person to do. Do you want them to introduce a bill? Do you want them to support a bill, oppose a bill? Do you want them to try and persuade a chairman of a legislative committee to have a hearing on a bill? Come prepared with the end you want to achieve. So when you go to the meeting, tell a person a little bit about yourself. And I think it's important to explain how brain injury has impacted your life. And again, I don't want to delve too much into that, only because I know Jeff will be touching upon that at the next webinar, which I think is on the 20th of February. But it's very important to have a story in place and talking to the previous tip, it's good to be succinct, but don't compromise your message. And also, go with the flow. You may start talking, and the person to whom you're speaking may want to hear more and ask questions. So again, that's a skill that's really tough to, I think, develop at times. It's reading who you're talking to and then reacting in that way. But the point here is go to your meeting a bit prepared to discuss how brain injury has impacted your life. Then you launch into what is of importance to you and why. And be prepared, as per the previous slide, be prepared to have 3 to 5 key facts relating to your concern. And then finally, again, ask that person what you want him or her to do on your behalf. I'm reiterating that point because I've seen that in a couple of meetings. People sometimes don't state exactly what it is you want them to do, what want their conversation partner to do. And also remember that many people, including lawmakers and elected officials, don't know too much about brain injury. So to them, this is a new subject, and all the more reason for you to have some ability to be a teacher. They don't know, they may not know what it's like to live with a brain injury. You're there to be the expert. You're there to be their advisor, in one sense, on brain injury issues. And finally, when we talked about after the meeting, it's important to send a thank you note to the person. And it's not only courteous, but it does give a chance to reiterate some of the main points that you've made during your meeting. And it also gives you a chance to add things that you may have missed or clarify things that may have been unclear. So the importance of a thank you letter is not just based on being courteous and building good relations. It's really given a person a chance to reconstruct the meeting, as it were, and again increasing the chances of advocacy success. Then finally, as the mantra continues to go, state what you want the person to do when you follow up with them. Again, I think repetition breeds familiarity. So continuing repeating what the goal is, what you want them to do, is a key piece to advocating effectively. And we're down to Q&A. So I guess wrapping up, the formal part of the presentation is I hope you have some idea of advocacy basics or advocacy principles. And just to reiterate, the questions that I posed at the beginning of the session were: why is the First Amendment important to the foundation for advocacy? What is advocacy? What are the basic steps to advocate effectively? How do I organize an advocacy message? How do I keep an advocacy message sincere and succinct? And finally, how do I accomplish a successful advocacy meeting? So I thank you for hearing me out. I hope that a lot of this information was valuable to you. And if you have any questions or want to follow up with me offline, I don't have my email address up here. I apologize for that, but it's the phone number is 732-745-0200. Again, 732-745-0200. And my email address is tgrady@bianj.org. Again, tgrady@bianj.org. And be happy to help out any way I can.
Wonderful.
And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate that. We have a smallish group here. I don't see any written questions, but I'd be willing to take the mute off of everyone if anyone would like to voice their questions here. I'm just going to unmute you all. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, I think I have to go individually and unmute. Okay, so I'm unmuting everyone here. If there's any questions, we have a few minutes before we wrap up, and the line is not free. So please feel free to go ahead and ask your questions here. You can also still write us the questions if you're more comfortable, but we do have some abilities for people to. We're getting some feedback on that. You know, I'm going to probably have to go back onto mute for. I apologize. We got a little bit of feedback on that. Okay, there we go. I apologize. We were having some feedback problems. I'm more than happy though to voice the questions if anyone would like to ask any questions here for Tom. All right.
I have one question for you, Tom. This is Brandy with Iowa. And through a lot of this, you were giving us good tips on, how to lay out your issue and keep it concise and all of that. If you're advocating for someone's needs and you're approaching, like, say, someone other than a legislator regarding something, and you're advocating for them to a landlord or an employer, that sort of situation, um, the layout of how you advocate for them, I would think would be the same. But do you suggest, as being that person's advocate, kind of taking the lead on bringing all of those issues up and discussing it with them, or trying to leave it up to the individual to voice as much as possible themselves and then filling in for them where there's, you know, questions or problems?
Oh, let me see. We might have muted Tom. Oops, I'm sorry, Tom. There you go. You're unmuted now. I apologize. Hopefully you heard that question.
There.
I did.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think I don't do individual advocacy. It's more grassroots advocacy. But I think if it were me, having been in a situation where you're kind of advocating for a person who really couldn't advocate for herself, I think I would have to imagine it. One has to gauge it. I think in some cases people can say things, but I think filling in some of the gaps also helps me. For example, my mother had passed away from breast cancer about a year and a half ago, 2 years, actually 2 years ago now. And during her illness, my aunt, and God bless her soul, came to almost, I think, every medical appointment my mother had. And the reason being was that my mother was not she didn't have a medical background. My aunt is a trained nurse, and she had dealt with a whole slew of issues. So, when the oncologist would ask my mother of questions, she would give the best answer she could, but my aunt would chime in from time to time and kind of fill in some of the gaps, which is very helpful. So, again, I think it's important to have someone available to kind of fill in some of the gaps, but it's also important to, I think, get the person articulate to the best of his or her ability their own thoughts, their own feelings. I think it's very authentic. But having someone in the background, someone that's trusted, I think most importantly, that's key. And we were very happy and very blessed to have my aunt, but unfortunately things didn't turn out the way we wanted them to. But the point here is not that. The point here is that I think it is important to have somebody kind of in the background and on deck and ready to kind of fill in some of those gaps that may need to be filled in.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions here for Tom right now? And I know we've gotten a few thank yous for Tom here on the question and answer section here. And I believe that the PowerPoint will be posted for those of you who are asking onto the USBIA library. And I believe Jeff will be monitoring that or sending them out in some way, shape, or form. So I believe you will get the PowerPoint through Jeff.
Okay, very good. Okay, and again, if I could be of any help to anybody, I would definitely make myself available.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate this. Oh, we do have one One question here, actually, or one comment. Um, it says, I'm originally from Staten Island and I'm Idaho State Ombudsman for TBI, retired faculty. What is the best way to meet people since this is a large state with only 1.5 million and I cannot travel? I basically use my phone and email contact. And what is your view for my purposes? So I think the question sounds like it's a large state. How do you meet people um, uh, as as uh, as trying to coordinate and network yourself in that capacity?
Well, I think it would have lots to do depending upon the person's situation. I think what we find is that a lot of people have a challenge with transportation. I mentioned before about CHIC, the Council for the Head Injury Community, our advocacy group. On our listserv, we have over 300 people registered for that, but a lot of people aren't able to attend the monthly meetings, and part of the reason I think is they don't have the ability to transport themselves, or if they do, or they have to take mass transit or coordinate, and that becomes quite challenging for them. But assuming a person can travel and is willing to in a large state, I mean, New Jersey geographically is kind of a small state. Um, I think one method would be to get involved in online type endeavor. Now, I don't know how it is out in Iowa. You said, right? The
This was
person from
I think she was from Idaho.
Idaho. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
Idaho
Yeah,
State
I think
Ombudsman.
Idaho State Ombudsman. I think one way to be connected is I mentioned meeting with lawmakers, but if a state has some sort of infrastructure for bringing, well, I guess social networking. As I'm thinking about this question, I think that's quite possible. We with the Facebook, with the social, with the LinkedIn, I think it makes things a little bit easier to connect with people without seeing them face to face. I think it's one way to do it. With Chick, a second way, even though some of these people aren't able to physically attend meetings, we do make sure we send the minutes out to people on the listserv so they have information they may use to help them out. For example, each month I'll do an advocacy training at our Chick meeting. And what I do is I polish up the talking points, put into a 1 or 2 page takeaway, and I send it out to all people on Chick who may be able to use that data for when they go out and advocate for themselves. So the point here is that, listservs, connecting with trusted online brain injury organizations as USBIA, or in our case, BIA of New Jersey. I think that's key. I think, again, short of being able to transport oneself to wherever he or she needs to go. Again, without knowing the particulars of Idaho, it's hard for me to say, but I would definitely try that in terms, online and support groups and things of that nature.
Okay, and she meant I think this. I believe this is from the same participant. We do have a BIA ID on Facebook, so Brain Injury Alliance of Idaho on Facebook. So that's wonderful. Facebook's a great
Good.
way I know to contact people through social media. And then a question asking, can you give me more information on CHHIC, the CHIC program you were referring to?
Sure. Chick is it's one of our advocacy committees here at the Alliance. It's comprised of people with brain injury. We don't exclude people that don't have a brain injury. We have family members who are involved, caregivers, but this is a group effectively governed by people with brain injury, and they come together to help advocate or help express those issues that may be of concern to them. And in our case, we also deal with some social events. We also get involved with some public policy efforts at the state level mostly. And we also have CHIC members go out and represent the Alliance in certain events, namely Brain Injury Awareness Day at the State House, which we're having next month. But I think that the big but the main takeaway for CHIC is it does serve as a forum to kind of express what people with brain injury want to express in terms of advocacy issues, what they want to advocate for. And then what we do is we try and bring it to either the staff's attention or to our policy committee, our advocacy and public affairs committee, which meets not as much as we should be at the moment, but does meet to discuss certain policy issues. But in one sentence, which I probably should have done right from the get-go, is CHIC does serve as a forum by which people can express and advocate for their own particular needs, and then staff addresses those needs to the furthest extent possible. Excuse me. I hope that answers your question.
Excellent. Okay. We've got a lot of thank yous, Tom. This has been excellent. Does anyone have any more questions or any comments for Tom?
I have one more question for you, Tom. This is Brandy again from Iowa. In regards
Hello.
Hi. In regards to that CHIC listserv, is that something that we can just sort of, bring to the attention of our constituents who are interested in, coming together with other survivors for that group feel and of, advocacy and all of that? Is that kind of how it's growing?
Yeah, I think, as I'm thinking, I think our CHIC group is established in our bylaws.
Ah.
So there may be something to consider for your own respective state, but in terms of managing it, it's pretty straightforward, I think. I have basically an Excel spreadsheet with the person's name, their email address, addresses, and that serves as a listserv, and we send out information, which includes, again, some advocacy trainings, meeting notices, meeting minutes. It's pretty easy to, I think, to create. And I think it's something that could be replicated in other states. And now that I'm also thinking about it, maybe that could be a topic of another webinar, how to create a CHIC group in your respective state. Because I do think it's important because, in one sense, CHIC is the group that advocates and expresses what people with brain injury may need, or it's one of the venues through which those needs can be expressed. So I think not only does it serve as a practical platform to express those needs, but I think it also gives a sense of belonging, sense of connectedness to people impacted by brain injury. So I think it's, and again, I'll throw it out there. If anybody wants to speak offline and talk about how he or she can create a CHIC group in their respective state, be happy to do it and flesh out some of the details of how to do it and some of the obstacles and that I've come across, some of the things I found at work. Be happy to do that. But I think it can be replicated in each state. I really do. I think it's important, personally.
That might be a nice next webinar for your guys' lineup. That's
Absolutely.
excellent. We had a question. What is your email again?
Sure. It's T as in Tom, G as in grape, R as in Robert, A as in Apple, D as in Dave, and Y as in yes, at BIANJ.org. TGRADY at BIANJ.org.
And I'm going to type this into our box here, our question box, so that hopefully everyone can see it as well. .org here, and I'm sending this to all. So, and Tom, maybe you want to also proofread there to make sure that looks right.
It is. What I'll do is I'll follow in kind and send my number out there.
Okay. Would you like me to type that into the box as well, Tom?
Sure. Okay. Well, actually, I'm typing it right now as we speak.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Save you the, let's see. Got so many phone numbers, I forget half of the time they are. Okay. Hopefully people can see that now. so you can reach me either way. And again, we'll try and be helpful to our fellow affiliates as best as we can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Again, we appreciate the webinar. It was very informative and educational. And if anyone has any further questions, we have Tom's email and his phone number. And again, thank you very much for joining us for the United States Brain Injury Alliance webinar, uh, Principles of Advocacy with Tom Grady. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you.